Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, in the news today, we're going to talk about the latest COVID-19 statistics. At least over 30 states now mandating the wearing of masks to try to help the spread, as other states set new all-time records with the number of cases and even deaths occurring in a single day. So we'll have those details, as well as the South China Sea, a very disputed area. Many people are laying claims to that area. We'll talk about what the latest has taken place there and why everybody wants their hand, so to speak, in that area. And also Iran having some very suspicious fires taking place. Some are wondering if there might be another country involved. So those stories and many more. But first, the Nordstream 1 has been supplying Germany with Russian gas since 2011 and 2012 and was such a success that Germany was looking forward to the completion of Nord Stream 2, a second set of gas pipelines connecting Russia and Germany, which began construction in 2018. Now, construction of the new pipelines was halted abruptly when the U.S. threatened to sanction anyone who would help the project to move forward.
Well, Denmark, however, is staring the U.S. in the face and taking their risks. They have announced they will go ahead and let the pipeline construction continue through the Baltic Sea. Now, the country's approval of the project is clearly in defiance of U.S. sanctions.
Well, the second pipeline project will stretch 750 miles from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea. When complete, Germany will be able to receive an additional 55 billion cubic meters of natural gas from the Russian company Gazprom. Now, that would double what they are getting now, making it 110 billion cubic meters. But the U.S. is at odds with Russia, holding sanctions over it, and so it does not want the pipeline project to continue.
However, there is more to the story than just their dislike for Russia. The United States is also worried that the new pipeline would enable Germany to become more of a powerhouse. Why? Simply because they would be receiving an unlimited supply of cheap gas at their disposal.
Well, Denmark has not only given the go-ahead for the pipeline to be installed through its territory, but it has pledged the use of its undersea pipelaying vessels as well. Now, that news was announced through a press released by the Danish Energy Agency. Now, these Danish ships are a vital part of completing the job because the pipeline is being constructed on the floor of a seabed that is also a disposal site for 50,000 tons of chemical waste dumped there after the post-World War II decommissioning of such weapons. So that must be pretty strange, you know, basically passing the pipeline through all that junk and waste.
Yeah, you wonder if that will stir up any of that junk and waste in that sea, causing problems with the sea life there, and of course people consume that as well. Well, Nord Stream 2 AG has also released a statement in response to the Danish green light, saying, as we expected, the DEA satisfied our requests. We will implement the project in accordance with the building permit and environmental impact assessment. We continue to consider various options for its completion, and in due time, we will inform about our plans. Well, Germany is not the only one with stakes in this project. Russia's Gazprom has been working with 5 European countries in total.
Well, the United States' response to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline could be as toxic as the chemicals lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. The U.S. warns Europe that they will become overly reliant on Russian energy. But what they are actually concerned with is that the demand for their own liquid natural gas will go down. So to take measures into their own hands, the U.S. Congress introduced a bipartisan bill last month that could lead to U.S. sanctions being imposed on European countries and even individuals involved with the Nord Stream 2 project.
Wow. Well, Tim Keller, head of the German gas lobby, has stated the move as, quote, totally unacceptable. The adoption of such a tightened and retroactive sanctions law would be an unacceptable encroachment on the EU sovereignty and energy security, end quote. Well, Europe will fight for its right to Russian gas, especially since U.S. liquefied natural gas is more expensive and obviously has a much longer route to travel to supply the continent. So while the U.S. uses its power to try and stop the project, they're definitely not going to make friends and influence people in European governments. And it seems like the consensus is the U.S. does not like when their cash flow is interrupted by, in this case, Russia supplying natural gas to the continent of Europe.
Absolutely. Well, moving to the Middle East now, in the war-torn country of Yemen, a special envoy has called for an urgent probe into new deadly airstrikes in Yemen's northern region. Now, according to the World Body's Humanitarian Coordination Office, it was reported that 11 civilians were killed in that bombing. However, the health ministry for the Houthi movement is reporting the casualties are closer to 24.
Well, video images from a hospital in that region show graphic and horrifying injuries of those who survived the bombing raid, many of whom are children. The Houthi officials say the Saudi-led coalition was responsible for striking the residential buildings, but an investigation has not begun, but has been promised.
Of course, the latest attack has drawn international condemnation, including from the UN Children's Fund, UNICEF. Now, since we began covering the war in Yemen back in 2015, it has become one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, leaving more than 100,000 killed. Now, the majority of these civilian casualties are directly caused by the Saudi-led coalition airstrikes that have taken place on the country.
Yeah, again, the people who have nothing to do with initiating this war and fighting it are the ones who are suffering the greatest losses. Well, and to add insult on top of injury, just last week, Britain's International Trade Secretary Liz Truss announced the country would resume arms sales to Saudi Arabia. In a statement to RT News, Truss said, I have assessed that there is not a clear risk that the export of arms and military equipment to Saudi Arabia might be used in the commission of a serious violation of international humanitarian law. Well, the International Trade Secretary agrees, insisting possible war crimes in Yemen seem to be isolated incidents.
Well, Middle East affairs writer and commentator Abdel Bari Atwan strongly disagrees, saying in an interview with RT, quote, why the United Kingdom is actually still sending these weapons to Saudi Arabia, I don't understand. I think this is hypocrisy and completely misleading to everyone, because the British government are seeking more money from Saudi Arabia. This is the aim. And definitely they wouldn't pay any attention to any, court case in this field. He said, it is shame on the British government to supply the Saudis with these lethal weapons.
Well, on top of the already challenging struggle faced by the people of Yemen, there is an environmental crisis unfolding there as well. Heavy rains and dangerous flooding has taken the lives of some now also. This, of course, is multiplying the sorrows of the Yemeni people.
Well, looking far to the east now, across the Asian continent, all the way to the South China Sea islands and reefs have been under transformation for years. While China has laid claim to the region and been militarizing the islands, turning them into remote outposts, it has not gone without some dispute.
Taiwan, along with several other Southeast Asian countries, are also trying to stake their claims in the South China Sea. Vietnam, in particular, which has been the biggest challenger to Beijing, Vietnamese Prime Minister spoke on the issue at the 36th Annual Southeast Asian Summit, saying, while the entire world is mobilizing its full force to fight against the pandemic, irresponsible acts and violations of international law are still taking place, affecting the environment of security and civility in several regions, including ours.
Well, U.S. Secretary Mike Pompeo has stated that China's claims to the South China Sea are unlawful and have been using bullying tactics to control the region. In 2019, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled that China's claims were invalid. Now, China and the United States have been at odds recently over issues of trade, coronavirus, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and now, once again, the South China Sea.
Well, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian commented on the issue, saying the U.S. statements neglects the history and facts about the issues of the South China Sea. It breaches the U.S. government's open commitment to not take any position on the sovereignty of the South China Sea. It violates and distorts international law. It is stirring up territorial disputes in the South China Sea, which is very irresponsible.
Well, both the U.S. and China have conducted military exercises in the area in the past few weeks, with the U.S. saying repeatedly it was to ensure freedom of navigation. Now, China believes otherwise, realizing the strategic value in the South China Sea. Now, this maritime way is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, and Catan, it's believed to hold large, enormous amounts of natural resources. So, of course, anyone who could lay claim to that is going to have those resources, and that's really what it's all about, is who gets the resources underneath.
That's right. And of course, there's a big push because these smaller countries have the United States backing them, and we know that the United States is a very energy dependent and a big consumer of the natural resources such as oil and gas. And of course, what we just heard about the dispute between Russia and Germany and other European nations, they don't like the fact when they're out of the deal when it comes to selling or exporting oil byproducts. Well, to look a little bit more into what the U.S. is doing to send a message to China in regards to that disputed territory over there, we're going to turn it over to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who has some information for us concerning that and some of these mysterious fires that are taking place in Iran as well. Larry, what do you have for us?
Despite its best efforts and best hopes, the world has still not overcome the inescapable affliction of the coronavirus. And even despite its failure to do so, the world has still not overcome the lust, which is a driving factor in both the current global pandemic and a looming global war. As evidence of this fact, there was an enormous live-fire military exercise carried out this week in Taiwan that spanned across all theaters, land, sea, and air. The large-scale drill was reportedly put on as a show of might and force against China and was fully supported by the U.S. This comes after earlier hostilities between Washington and Beijing over matters having to do with the resource-rich waters of the South China Sea, from which both nations are striving to profit. One of those skirmishes involved wrestling between China and Hong Kong that became so intense that America decided to stand up and show its willingness to jump in by sending a fourth of its carrier fleet into Chinese waters. This prompted China to release statements threatening to dispatch carrier-killing missiles, and all of this was just over a month ago. Now, the U.S. is backing yet another nation that Beijing believes to be its own by helping Taiwan. The Taiwanese president herself was seen present at the recent drills, which she said was a demonstration of Taiwan's determination to defend itself against Chinese aggression and dominion. Here's some footage from those massive drills. The ferocity of the exercises are thought to be a deliberate effort to send a message to Beijing. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that he believes that things are shifting in the region and that the world is seeing countries all throughout Asia, South Asia, and the Pacific recognizing that the United States is willing to do the things necessary to assist them. China, however, says that the U.S.'s efforts are intended to do nothing more than to destabilize the region, and there are reports that some of the nations in the area would prefer that America leave the region to its own occupants and their own politics. Not likely to occur, however, and here goes a few stats to help understand why 1/3 of the world's shipping flows through the South China Sea. 10% of all of the world's fisheries are reported to be located there, and it is believed to contain 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas and 11 billion barrels of oil. The oil-rich nation of Iran, which for years now has had the distinct privilege of being on America's list of 7 nations scheduled for takedown and reorganization, is currently experiencing mysterious fires and explosions across this country, including a fire here recently which involved 7 ships. Reporters suspect that the conflagrations and detonations, which have followed each other by a matter of days, are not isolated events, and Iran itself says it knows who is responsible for them all, but right now it is choosing to reserve comment. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, I'm sure in the days and weeks to come, we'll learn more about the cause of those suspicious fires in Iran.
That's right.
Well, now to our COVID-19 news. People in lines for COVID testing in some states are actually sickened to how long the wait can be, which could be upwards to 12 hours, with the turnaround times taking upwards to a week in some states like Arizona, and that's to find out whether or not you have the virus, or you're positive or negative.
Right.
Now, Matt Hines, a doctor in Tucson, Arizona, said regarding the turnaround times for COVID testing, don't stop doing the right thing to get this under control. Now, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Bottoms was tested, and it took 8 days before she knew she was positive, and all the while she was out in public, she said, our testing system is failing, and this is the reason the virus continues to spread and people are inadvertently putting people in harm's way.
Right. Well, Dr. Hines said that he couldn't blame people for wanting to work while they waited for test results, as waiting would put people out of work for 7, 8, or even 9 days when this should be all taken care of in a day, he said. And of course, these long times and delays, he said, should not be taking place in America. For example, in California, about 100,000 tests are performed a day, and about 8% of those are coming back positive. But with the delays, those people could potentially be affecting other people.
Right, all the contact that's going on while they're waiting for their test results to come back.
That's right.
Well, Texas has recently reported 129 COVID-related deaths, the state's largest one-day death toll so far. Now, the number of new cases topped 10,000, and cities like Houston are getting help from the Army as they send doctors and nurses to help along with the doctors and nurses from New York State. Now, a doctor who was a flight surgeon in the Iraq War, Dr. Ivan Melendez, said, "This is heartbreaking. Things are so dire that patients are being resuscitated on stretchers in the hallways. And the night before last, he said he had 4 calls of patients dying."
Well, Texas Governor Abbott said that patients under 30 are a driving force in the Texas COVID-19 surge. Dr. Melendez also, as a recovered patient of COVID-19, said the emotions run high for patients, loved ones, and the doctors and nurses on the front lines. 6 nurses that Dr. Melendez worked with have died of COVID-19, and his hospital, he said, is doing the best they can to make more room for more COVID cases.
Well, the Taylor County Jail in Texas has been having a surge in COVID-19 cases, with 274 inmates and 29 correctional officers testing positive, but no deaths reported so far. Now, the Taylor County Emergency Management Coordinator officers will not be jailing people who have minor warrants, but the major warrants will still be jailed.
Well, the debate on wearing masks continues to be an issue as the coronavirus cases rise. The mayor of Miami said in a press briefing that the severity and seriousness that we find ourselves in, needs to really be taken a look at. And he also met with business owners as they considered another lockdown. Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber said another lockdown depends on whether people adhere to wearing masks or whether they do not, because the trajectory of COVID-19 cases has been steadily going up for weeks, and it's unsustainable, he said. Florida, of course, doesn't have a statewide mandate on wearing masks, and there is intense resistance, though, to some people for the wearing of masks.
Right, in a lot of places now, even in Texas here, you're seeing masks required right there on the door. Anyone entering the building must have a mask.
That's right.
on. Well, at a Royal Palm Beach Walmart, as camera footage caught a man who was pushing another man in a wheelchair, pulled a gun on another shopper after a confrontation that happened over a mask. Now, in Utah, there was a county meeting over masks for school children that was adjourned early because the meeting itself was in health violation. Now, while the governors of Colorado and Arkansas announced mask mandates of their own, masks are now required in at least 30 states.
Well, lastly, there have been new developments that have come to light regarding COVID-19 that's changing what everyone thought regarding how the virus works. Now, previously, we were told that it attacked the respiratory system, but new information shows that it actually is a vascular disease that attaches to blood vessels and, of course, causes blood clots. So that means that it's not confined to the lungs and can affect any organ in the body. And this is, of course, why some people are dying from diseases of the heart, the lungs, the liver, etc.
Interesting. Well, in autopsies performed on COVID-related deaths, doctors found thousands of tiny blood clots that were caused by this COVID-19 virus, shedding some new light on the virus, how it works, and what it could potentially attack within the human body.
Yeah, well, that's pretty scary because, obviously you need blood to survive. And if those clots do take place in the body, like the doctors are discovering, of course, it can cause problems in different areas, especially the brain and the heart. When people have those clots there, it causes, heart attacks and, of course, strokes. But, the information that we're seeing now in the medical community, it basically tells us that they're still learning about this. They don't know as much as they may have thought that they have known. But interestingly enough, as we've reported in times past, Yisrael Hawkins actually shows from the Holy Scriptures how this was foretold thousands of years ago. Now, I know that might seem unbelievable, but thousands of years ago, where and who it started with, how it's developed, who it will affect, and what we can do to endure what's to come next from mankind because of their activities. And so if people want to find out a little bit more about coronavirus and how to protect them and their families, but how to protect themselves for what's to come, it's a great idea to contact the House of Yahweh to find out more information. And of course, when they do, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
Well, to contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to yahweh.com, yisraelhawkins.com, or yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to ypnnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can do so by emailing info@yahweh.com. Any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen right now. And again, if you'd like to check out 2 totally free Bible study tools on the market, you can go to YisraelSays.com for the Yisrael Says program, and you can go to AskYisrael.com for the Ask Yisrael program. They have search engines. You can type in a word or phrase, and it will pull up pages and pages of information for you to go through, guaranteed to enlighten your understanding.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.